In other news now, all the accused in the Nulane investment case has been discharged. Today, the Free State High Court ruled that Gupta associate Ital Sharma, Ronika Raghavan, Dinesh Patel and former senior Free State officials are now free. They were charged with fraud and money laundering related to the 24.9 million rand paid to Nulane Investments by the Agriculture Department. Now, eNCA's Moloko Moloto is standing by in Bloemfontein with the details of what came out in court today. Now, Moloko, acting judge Nompumelelo Gusha slamming the state for its ineptitude, saying they've let the people of South Africa down. Scathing words from the judge there. Where did the state go so wrong, Moloko?
Hello, Marcel Godeng. Well, indeed, you'd recall that there were 6 individuals in this particular trial and 2 companies called Nulane and eNCA. The 3 were former senior officials of the Free State Agriculture Department. Now, 5 of the 6 individuals applied for a discharge in line with Section 174 of the Criminal Procedure Act just after the state closed its case. I think it was in March. And this was because they believed that the state really had no case against them. And today we heard in court the acting judge Nompumelelo Gusha agreeing totally with them that they are discharged, they are free, and they can just walk, which is exactly what they did. They just walked out of the courtroom and they are free. With regard to the 6th individual, this is Dr. Dimakato Morosi, who at some point was also head of the Agriculture Department here in the Free State. She did not apply for to be released on discharge in line with Section 174 of the Criminal Procedure Act. It was because she really believed that there was no case whatsoever. Now, after the others walked out of the courtroom, she remained there cutting a loan figure, but it did not even take more than 10 minutes for the state, because it wanted to continue to press ahead for her to be found guilty of all those charges of fraud as well as money laundering and the violation of the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act. But her counsel, Advocate Ishmael Semenya, senior counsel, stood up and really dismissed whatever the argument that the state was putting across, and the acting judge agreed with her, that is Dr. Morosi, and as a result, the acting judge said she was acquitted. She's not guilty of anything. So all of the 6, including the 2 companies that initially faced fraud, money laundering, and the violation of the Public Finance Management Act provisions, they are now free. The judge used a very strong language, Marcel. She basically described the manner in which the lead investigators from the investigating directorate handled the evidence and the entire investigation as a comedy of errors, indicating that they were just lackadaisical. Very difficult word. They were lackadaisical. If you look at the dictionary there, it says that you lack enthusiasm, you're just lazy, you lack determination. That's how she described this particular people who are investigating this case on behalf of the state. Maybe let's listen to her as she was handing down judgment.
The defense successfully elicited from him that the disputed documents from the moment they were seized at Glen to when they were eventually stored were mishandled with no correct chain of custody being complied with. He furthermore conceded that upon receiving the documents, he did not consult any of the accused, if only to get their inputs regarding said documents. With regards to the World Window letter, he conceded that he did not even attempt to establish the origins thereof and or the authenticity thereof. So too was the position with regards to the other disputed documents. He conceded that he did not even attempt to have them authenticated by their forensic crime laboratory. at the risk of repetition, to say that the manner in which this investigation was conducted is a comedy of errors would be an understatement of the millennia.
A comedy of errors, the understatement of the millennium. I mean, she really isn't mincing her words there, Moloko. Now, is this already being seen as vindication for these Gupta associates?
Oh, yes. We managed to speak to Ital Sharma, the man who is at the center of this particular controversy. You'd recall he is the director of Nulane Investments. This is the company that was awarded a 24.9 million rand contract to do a feasibility study to determine whether the provincial government, also with one company, World Window Impacts, that is based in India, the one that actually started this whole process and recommended Nulane to be the one that would do a feasibility study. So it was on the basis of that feasibility study done by Nulane Investment. By the way, they did not do it themselves. They subcontracted consultancy firm Deloitte and paid them 1.5 million rand, and they pocketed the rest. And part of that money that was paid to them found its way into the bank accounts of companies that are directly owned by the fugitive Gupta brothers and their two wives. Now, we spoke to him after the court. You'd recall, Marcel, that this particular Nulane issue, case, is the first state capture case that went on trial. So it was a test case for the National Prosecuting Authorities Investigating Directorate to prove that it can handle many other state capture cases, particularly those that are related to the fugitive Gupta families. But let's listen to Ital Sharma, because he is upbeat, he is buoyant at the fact that he is now a free man, and he's accusing the politicians of utilizing the state entities, including the NPA, to pursue politically those that they disagree with. Let's listen to him.
I'm relieved that this matter is now over and behind us. But when you heard the judgment and the scathing judgment, I'm also angered that the state would act in the way that it did, that the investigators would act in the way that they did. A comedy of errors of the millennium, as the judge called it. So it's a disappointing indictment on the state, and when the state tries to pursue political wars, basically, trying to fight political battles through the courts. And it should never be allowed. Democracy is at stake. This case shows that the judiciary at least is independent and strong. And we need this to continue in South Africa, because politically driven prosecutions are going to be the bane of this democracy. And they're happening. This was the first case, and there are other happening because of so-called state capture, which has also been a false narrative. The narrative of state capture has been presented in a particular way, and it's been fed to South Africans, and the South Africans have swallowed it up, frankly. And now things are coming to light.
Well, Moloko, what happens now? Is there any way for the state even to begin to redeem itself here?
Well, I think, Marcel, it would be important to mention that the dismissal or the discharging of this 5 and the acquittal of the 6 individual was not necessarily based on the merits in terms of whether they were wrong to award this contract without issuing out a tender or not, or whether the fact that they were accused of violating the provisions of the Constitution, the provisions of even the internal policies. So the dismissal of the case was not based on that. It was purely on the basis that the state has failed to handle the evidence to prove in terms of the investigations that they did. So it was on those technical bases that the defense successfully managed to poke holes on the evidence that was presented before the presiding officer. So the court did not even go into saying the presiding officer for awarding that particular contract was right or wrong. Now, The state is saying that it is going to study this particular judgment. Why? Because it is important for them to know whether they would need to appeal this particular judgment by the Free State High Court, because today, as we were in this particular case, Marcel, in another courtroom, Mosebenzi Zwane, the former MEC of Agriculture, who was the MEC during that particular transaction, and we would also remember him as the former Minerals Resources Minister, was appearing in a separate courtroom, and some of the accused in the Nulane case had to also go there and appear. This is with regard to the 280 million rand Estina project, which was established as per the recommendations of the feasibility study done by Nulane. Now, his case has been postponed to the 29th of August for a pre-trial conference. The possibility is that the trial is likely to start next year. Now, the NPA is arguing that today's judgment is not going to impact on that particular case and many other state capture cases that it is dealing with. Let's listen to the IG's Cindy Siwesibuka.
What basically happens now is for us to then study the judgment, to then look at the remarks made by the judge, and then to fortify our team to best prepare for other trials to come, because this judgment does not stop us from vigorously prosecuting the other matters without fear, favor, or prejudice, and that's exactly what we intend to do. This was a practice run for us to see what we need to improve on, to see what we need to beef up, and to also decide on what to do better in order to succeed in the other matters. What is also pivotal to remember is that many of these cases are based on different set of facts. Yes, the investigating officers and other matters might be some of the same investigators placed therein. However, it was not just that was criticized by this judge. So we will then go back, regroup, find out what needs to be improved, add some of the suggestions, because part of the criticism there emanates suggestions on what we could do better so that we come back more stronger. However, what we'll emphasize is that the state still stands behind the decision to bring this matter to court. We did believe that we have a prima facie case, and we'll then study the judgment and decide on what to do moving forward.
Well, there you have it. eNCA's Moloko Moloto also reporting for us there live from Bloemfontein.